मानुषी संवाद में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज हमारे विशिष्ट मेहमान हैं तथागत रॉय जी, जो कि फॉर्मर गवर्नर त्रिपुरा और मेघालय के रहे हैं। बट ही इज नॉट अ रन ऑफ द मिल पॉलिटिशियन। ही हैज अ वेरी इम्प्रेसिव सीवी। शुरू करते हैं। ही इज एन इंजीनियर बाय प्रोफेशन एंड ऑल्सो हैज अ लॉ डिग्री। तथागत रॉय जी ने मेट्रो रेलवे जो कलकत्ता में बनी, he was the chief engineer designs of metro railway Calcutta, and we should all know that Calcutta was the first city in India to get a metro much before Delhi. और he was उसके अलावा पढ़ाया भी इंजीनियरिंग इन्होंने। he was the founder head of construction engineering in Jadavpur University. Then he joined BJP and he was the sixth president of West Bengal unit of BJP from 2002 to 2006. In addition, he's also a celebrated author. बंगाली में भी और अंग्रेजी में दोनों में इन्होंने कई पुस्तकें लिखी हैं। मैं दो का खास मेंशन करना चाहूंगी। एक तो श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी, हिज लाइफ एंड टाइम्स, और दूसरी है माय पीपल अपरूटेड। दिस इज ऑन द हिंदू एक्सोडस। Yes. So the second book of Tathagat Roy ji is My People Uprooted. ये हिंदू एक्सोडस जो 1947 में, हाँ बिल्कुल, जो शुरू हुआ, ये एक्सोडस पार्टीशन के वक्त जब ईस्ट पाकिस्तान बना, जो आज बांग्लादेश है, ईस्ट पाकिस्तान बना, तो तब से अब तक कैसे हिंदू एक्सोडस होते जा रहा है। एंड ही इज गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट the consequences and the implications of fast changing religious demography of Bengal. यानी जो बंगाल की religious population proportion बदलती गई है 47 के बाद से, और बांग्लादेश में तो आप जानते ही हैं एक माइनॉरिटी, बहुत छोटी माइनॉरिटी रह गई है, और बंगाल में भी जो हिंदुस्तान के अंदर बचा है बंगाल, उसमें भी कैसे रिलीजियस डेमोग्राफी बदलते जा रही है, और हिंदू कैसे सिकुड़ते जा रहे हैं और इस्लाम कैसे एक्सपैंड होता जा रहा है। इसके क्या इम्प्लीकेशंस हैं नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के लिए और हमारे देश की सिविलाइजेशनल सर्वाइवल के लिए। वेलकम तथागत रॉय जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग, एंड प्लीज start wherever you like. Let's hear the story as you would like to tell it.
नमस्कार मधु जी, मैं बहुत आभारी हूं कि आप मुझे ये अवसर दिए हैं कि इतना बड़ा एक ऑडियंस को एक विषय में अवगत कराने के लिए, जिसमें मैं पिछला 30-35 साल से कुछ शोध कर रहा हूं. Some research I have been doing on this subject. You see, whenever people talk of refugees or partition, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind, जो लोग पहले ही सोचते हैं, वो है पंजाब पार्टीशन. ये पंजाब पार्टीशन के चलते कुछ 20-25 पुस्तकें लिखी गई, कुछ सिनेमा बनाया गया, fiction, non-fiction, both kinds of books have been written. But about the other partition, the Eastern partition, very little has been written. The Punjab partition has been written by eminent authors such as G.S. Khosla, such as Penderal Moon, such as Khushwant Singh, such as Bhisham Shani, such as Sadat Hasan Manto. But you would not believe it, but the one single इकलौता पुस्तक ये बंगाल पार्टीशन के बारे में और उसके बाद जो लोगों के जो एक्सोडस हुई पूर्वी बंगाल से पश्चिम बंगाल के ओर, जो एक्सोडस हुई, about that exodus the only book so far, I mean, comprehensive book so far, have been written in English, has been my book. This one, which you just mentioned a little while back. My People Uprooted, The Exodus of Hindus from East Pakistan and Bangladesh. तो इसमें बहुत तथ्य है. All of it is, I'm not going to speak in this short talk, but I will principally concentrate on the subject of how the religious imbalance or the change in demography in West Bengal and the other Bangladesh rim states, principally Assam and Bihar, have been changing, how this balance has been changing, and to what result. What is eventually going to, what is the immediate result, what is the result in the medium term, what is the result in the long term. All these things I'm going to speak on.
May I
So,
ask a question
yes,
before you
please,
start
please,
that?
please, anytime.
Because at that time, I don't want to disturb you.
Sure.
That's why I thought a question that suddenly came to my mind is this.
Yes.
Bengal has been known for its intellectual leadership of the freedom movement, social reform movement of 19th century. It was intellectually far ahead of the rest of the country. और पंजाब में उस तरह से लिखने पढ़ने का ट्रेडिशन थोड़ा कम था, पर बंगाल का कैसे है कि किसी ने लिखा नहीं और पंजाब के बारे में इतने लोगों ने फिर भी लिख लिया. हालांकि जितना बड़ा हादसा है उस हिसाब से आई थिंक पिटिफुल अमाउंट हैज बीन रिटन, लॉट मोर इन एनी अदर कंट्री वी वुड हैव हैड hundreds and thousands of books. But why the silence on the Bengali side?
You're absolutely right, ma'am. And this is one of the subjects that I have dealt with in great detail in my book. I shall presently refer to it. Just give me a second to find out the relevant page. And then when I come to it, I will mention it. But I'll just find out the relevant page. Yes, thank you. I've got it. And then I'll refer to it when I come to it. Now, may I begin on the subject itself?
Please.
See, the terms, let me first make a few clarifications on the terms. Originally, what was known as the Bengal Presidency was a huge province of British India, जो कि जिसमें उत्तर प्रदेश, बिहार, उड़ीसा, बंगाल, असम, इतने सारे वर्तमान प्रदेश शामिल थे. All these states were included in that Bengal presidency. Slowly, little by little, these provinces such a large province became ungovernable and they were gradually separated. With the result that by the beginning of the 20th century, we were left with what is known as undivided Bengal and a few other adjoining Bengali speaking areas of Bihar. Part of it is in Jharkhand and in Assam, some Bengali speaking areas. This Bengal was partitioned by Lord Curzon in 1905, and it was divided into two parts. One was called the Bengal Presidency, the other was called the Eastern Bengal and Assam. And the idea of Lord Curzon in dividing this was to create a Muslim majority province. But there was great agitation against it, and a lot of Muslims joined in that agitation also, with the result that eventually, say around 1911, this Bengal partition was undone and the two Bengals were joined up once again. But at the same time, the capital of India was shifted from Kolkata, then Calcutta, to Delhi. Now, then later on, we all know that in 1947, when there was partition, when there was independence, Bengal and Punjab were both partitioned. In Bengal, the part which is the Hindu majority part, which was known as West Bengal, that became part of the Indian Union, whereas the Muslim majority part became known as first East Bengal, then East Pakistan. Then in 1971, there was this Bangladesh Liberation War, and East Pakistan broke itself free from West Pakistani domination, and East Pakistan became known as Bangladesh, and that is the status that obtains right now. But occasionally, I'll be referring to the subject, the phrase two Bengals. Two Bengals mean one Bengal is the Indian state of West Bengal. The other Bengal is the sovereign republic of Bangladesh. But I'll be referring to them as the two Bengals. Now, there is a paradox about Bengal. If you travel from west to east, if you traveled past tense, if you traveled from west to east in British India, you'd find gradually the percentage of Muslims going down, down, down. Thus, Balochistan, Sindh, Punjab, they were solidly Muslim majority. Then UP had a smaller number of Muslims. Bihar had an even smaller number of Muslims. West Bengal had a smaller number of Muslims. Suddenly, as soon as you enter East Bengal, the number of Muslims jumped. They became the majority. But if you moved further east into Assam, then you would find that the people were either Hindus or animists, but they were not Muslims. Now, this is a paradox. How exactly this thing had happened that suddenly in one part of the subcontinent, which is isolated from the other parts, it became a it became a Muslim majority part. The answer to this is that, I mean, there are several explanations, but one explanation which I consider most plausible is that this entire area, I mean, for that matter, the whole of India had become Buddhist. And a lot of occult practices, undesirable practices had crept into this Buddhism. Now, Adi Shankaracharya, who started from the village of Kaladi in present day Kerala, he had traveled all over India on foot, on foot. And in the process, he converted the entire country, entire India, into back into Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism and back from Buddhism. That is why now, although Buddhism had its origin in India and Nepal, it doesn't exist except by a small minority in either of these countries. But East Bengal was an inaccessible place. It was full of rivers, a lot of vegetation, jungles, and generally quite impassable. It was impassable even much later. There is a district in East Bengal which did not have an inch of railway line in British India, where the British had managed to lay railway lines everywhere. One district called Barisal did not have an inch of railway line. There were so many watercourses all along the district. Anyway, so Adi Shankaracharya could not could not go into East Bengal. So he left it alone and he traveled over the rest of India and converted the India from Buddhism back to Sanatan Dharma. But he left East Bengal alone. Later on, some Sufi preachers came from Western India, and somehow they found the Buddhists were much more amenable to their proselytization, and they managed to convert the bulk of the East Bengali Hindus, East Bengali Buddhists, to Islam. Even so, until the middle of 19th century, in the whole of undivided Bengal, Hindus were a majority. Muslims were still a minority. Then the picture started changing mainly as a result of greater procreation among Muslims, with the result that, according to the 1941 census, in undivided Bengal, they were in a ratio of 55 to 45. 55 Muslims, 45% Hindus. Then, as time went on, changes happened. The biggest change was independence and partition in 1947. In 1951, there was a census in West Bengal. In that census, before that census, a huge movement of Bengali Hindus had happened from East Bengal to West Bengal, as a result of which, in according to the 1951 census, the relation or the balance was in West Bengal was 79 Hindu to 21 Bengal. Mind you, there is one very important difference between Bengal and Punjab partition. In Punjab partition, all the Muslims of India went over to Pakistani Punjab, and all the Hindus and Sikhs of Punjab came over to Indian Punjab.
No,
But
no,
in
no, no.
Punjab,
Muslims didn't go.
a
Muslims
large
didn't
number of
go.
no, no, but say for instance, I have seen part of it myself. Say Jalandhar city, it is full of mosques, but there isn't a single Musalli anywhere. Look, as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, with the exception of a small area called Malerkotla, the rest of the Muslims went over to Pakistani Punjab. Whereas in the Eastern partition, practically all the Muslims remained here in India. And some had gone, a very small number had gone, mostly middle class people who had gone in search of jobs. But the poorer class, the bulk of them, they remained in India. And whereas the Hindus were driven out, very mercilessly driven out, that is another different chapter which you can get to know if you read my book. The kind of torture, the persecution, the killing, the rapes that had taken place in particularly in 1950, thereafter in 64, in 1971. So as a result, the mm, relation, the balance in West Bengal was 79 to 21. There were still 21% Hindus in West Bengal in 1951. Now, what is the situation in 2011, which was the last census? In 2011, we find that the percentage of Hindus has gone down. The West Bengal is a Hindu majority part of the state country, Hindu majority part of the whole of Bengal. The percentage of Hindus has gone down and the percentage of Muslim has increased, with the result that the balance is now 70 Hindus to 30 Muslim in West Bengal. Whereas in Bangladesh, in according to the 1941 census, there were 29% Hindus to 71% Muslims. 29% Hindus to 71% Muslims. That has now changed, according to the 2011 census, to 8% Hindus, including a handful of Buddhists and Christians, 92% Muslims. Why is this anomaly that in both the Bengals, the percentage of Muslims have increased? In Bangladesh, it has obviously increased because the Hindus were driven out by persecution, by Islamic persecution, by threats, by rape, by many other kinds of economic exploitation. So naturally, the percentage of Hindus will go down. But why did it go down in West Bengal? It went down in West Bengal because of greater procreation among the Muslims in West Bengal and इन्फिल्ट्रेशन जो घूसपैठ जो कहते हैं जिसको ये घूसपैठ सन 1970 से ये घूसपैठ आना चालू हुई और उसके बाद माने स्थिति ऐसा बनता गया कि कुछ एरियाज है वेस्ट बंगाल में जो मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी बन गए वेस्ट बंगाल कैसे क्रिएट हुआ जहां पर मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी था वो तो पाकिस्तान में चला गया जहां मुस्लिम माइनॉरिटी में थे वो वेस्ट बंगाल में वो इंडिया में या वेस्ट बंगाल में रह गया बट these parts also as a result of this infiltration and greater procreation they became Muslim majority among them there are 3 districts Murshidabad Uttar Dinajpur and Malda which have become Muslim majority in West Bengal. This is not a thing confined to West Bengal. This has happened to the other Bangladesh Rim state also, that is Assam. In fact, Assam, it was much worse because Assam was a sparsely populated state. The result is that in Assam, so many districts like Hailakandi, Karimganj, South Salmara, Dhubri, Barpeta, Gwalpada, Nagaon, all these districts have become Muslim majority in Assam. Then in Bihar, even in Bihar, parts of which are very close to Bangladesh, the the balance of population in the districts of Kishanganj, Katihar, and Araria, the Muslims have become majority or nearly so. Now, the question might arise as to why there has been great agitation at the number of Muslims increasing in Assam, whereas in West Bengal there has been no such thing. And this is one of the questions, very relevant question that you raised. मैडम इसका जवाब ऐसा है कि असम में लोग इस बारे में सजग हो गए. People of Assam became conscious of this. And there was a linguistic, not only a question of religious balance, but there was a question of linguistic balance also involved in this. The Assamese speaking people, they feared that they would be swamped by Bengali speaking people coming from Bangladesh. And of course, they would be swamped by the Muslims. The Assamese, who are majority Hindus, they would be swamped by the Bengali speaking Muslims who are coming from Bangladesh. That is why there was Assam agitation, a violent agitation in the 1980s. There was an accord, which was not a very sensible accord, according to me, in 1986 between Rajiv Gandhi and the Assamese ASU and other organizations. But the point is that there was a consciousness about it in Assam, whereas there was nothing, no such thing in West Bengal. And the reason for that is what? The reason for that is a left mindset which prevailed in West Bengal. That left mindset which had pervaded the mindset of minds of Bengali Hindus ever since the 1930s had put it in their brains that even if you are swamped by Muslims, even if you have been driven out by the Muslims in East Bengal and you have become paupers in West Bengal, still it is a sin to speak ill of the Muslims. The Muslim can do no wrong. Thou shalt never speak ill of the Muslim. This mindset had come in. It was largely, it was a sort of, you could say, a joint effort of the communists as well as the Nehruvians. There was Gandhian thinking mixed in it also. And the result was that there was, the people were not bothered. It is only after that the Bharatiya Janata Party became, gathered a little strength in the state that people have become conscious in the state. Now, you had put a very relevant question as to why there was no consciousness and what do people say when there is when somebody points out that all these Hindus were driven out from Bangladesh or East Pakistan, and why is there no consciousness in West Bengal about it, as there is in Punjab? Unlike in Punjab, why is there no consciousness? Now, I will refer you to page 422 of my book, which lists out 11 excuses. 11 excuses as to why people in West Bengal thought it sinful to speak ill of Muslims. Number one is, the forgive and forget, or let bygones be bygones. Second, two wrongs don't make a right. Third, there is a reason, they were also wronged. Fourth, this might start a riot, so we shouldn't talk about it. Fifth, there was equal brutality on both sides. What is the point in इस बारे में बात करने का फायदा क्या है? Then, many Muslims saved Hindu lives too. Many Muslims saved Hindu lives too. They didn't help them to stay on in East Pakistan, but they saved their lives. Then, it is all the fault of the British. What can the poor Muslims do? Then eighth, their religion is like that, what can you do? उनके धर्म ही ऐसे है, उनका मजहब ऐसा है, आप क्या कर सकते हैं? Then ninth, It is directed, this was specific about the post 2001 pogrom. The communists had brought out an argument which said that this is directed not against the Hindus but against the Awami League supporters. And the Awami League supporters included some Hindus, so all Hindus were driven out. Then the 10th is the classic Marxist argument, that is, this was all an economic struggle. And 11th is the negationist argument that this never happened, all nonsense. Just like there are Holocaust deniers, they said this never happened. Now, these are the things that had worked in the minds of West Bengal people to answer your very pointed, very relevant question. Now, uh, what are the results? Let us look at the results. The results are, number one is there are difficulties for Hindus to live in the districts of Murshidabad, Malda, Uttar Dinajpur, and certain parts of other districts also which have got large Muslim pockets. I have myself visited a number of them before, that is, before I became a governor. I had visited a number of them and I had seen really heartrending scenes that temples, Hindu temples, had been desecrated, Hindu houses had been burnt, Hindus had been driven out of the place. There was a place called Deganga. There is a place called Deganga in the district of North 24 Parganas where this kind of thing happened. Then I went there all alone by myself and I saw all these things. Then I spoke to Advaniji, who was at that time this was in 2010. He was still the leader, supreme leader of the BJP. I spoke to Advaniji and I said that this is the situation. Advaniji immediately sent two of his MPs who saw the place and who came back and gave a report. When they went, by that time, when I went, nobody had any warning. But when these two MPs went, you would not imagine the sort of resistance that was there from both the communists and the Trinamool Congress. All over, there were black flags, there were shoes, गाली बकते थे, तरह तरह का मुर्दाबाद मुर्दाबाद कहते थे, झाड़ू ये दिखाते थे, इस तरह का चीज चलता रहा. So this was repeated in a number of places. I had seen some myself. In one of the places, in a place called Naliakhali in South 24 Parganas this time, in South 24 Parganas, Naliakhali, a poultry farmer had some 1,500 heads of chicken in a poultry farm. All the chicken were burnt alive. These marauders, they came and set fire to all the chickens in that poultry farm. The man was rendered a pauper. He was a prosperous poultry farmer. He was rendered a pauper. Then this is the life that the kind of life that the Hindus have lived in these parts. There are there is grabbing of land. Say, for instance, there's a place called Arjunpur in the district of Murshidabad, where Shamshan land has been grabbed, with the result that Hindus, when one of them dies, he has to be taken to a faraway burning ghat. Shamshan land has been grabbed. They can't do any cremation work over there. There are certain parts where, the Bengali Hindu women have a practice of doing Lakshmi Puja in the evening and they blow conch shells. जिसको शांख कहते हैं, वो conch shell blow करते हैं. इन लोग आकर के कहा कि ये आप कर नहीं सकते हैं क्योंकि हमारा ये नमाज का वक्त है, इस नमाज के समय ये खाने में आने से हमारा गुनाह हो जाएगा, तो बच्चों आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते. So this is the sort of situation. There is, as I said, there is better consciousness in Assam, so it is not so bad.
No, let me also ask you if you. I hope you haven't finished the Bengal part. For example, in these areas, were women being abducted, seduced, taken away? What they call womb jihad. Was that also common? Is that why Hindus started leaving those districts? where Muslims became a majority?
You see, Hindus have not exactly left. See, after all, these are all poor people. Where will they go? West Bengal is an extremely thickly populated state. And the rest of India is also not thinly populated. So, where will the poor people go? So, they have managed to stay on even in spite of all the persecutions that they face, but they have learned to tone down their Hinduism. Say, for instance, this conch shell blowing, it has become a thing of the past in many places. The when someone dies in Hindu society, he has to be carried to a shamshan very far away. That kind of thing happens. But there hasn't been a regular general exodus from any of these places. I'll give you one more example. There is a place called Daribhit. Daribhit is a small village in the district of Uttar Dinajpur. Here, there is a school where there are Muslim teachers, Hindu teachers. Now, two Muslim teachers were brought in to teach Urdu. Now, there are no Urdu speaking students over here. The Muslims who are there in the school, they are all Bengali speaking Muslims. But Urdu students, Urdu teachers were brought in because the government, state government, wanted to humor the Urdu speaking Muslims. The Bihar border is very close, and the Bihari Muslims are Urdu speaking, but the Bengali Muslims are Bengali speaking. They did not want this the Urdu teachers, but Urdu teachers were brought in. And when there was an agitation against this in Daribhit, the police came and opened fire. With the result that two of the students were killed. Now, this thing has not found any publicity in the All India press or anywhere. It's a horrible thing. These two students who were just agitating that they don't need, their demands were that we don't need Urdu teachers, we need teachers in English, mathematics, computers. So we take these Urdu teachers back. The police came and opened fire in a district, in a town called Daribhit, in near Islampur, in the district of Uttar Dinajpur. So this is the sort of thing that is happening. In spite of that, people live on. Now, I was talking about the results. What sort of results do you have? We have or we apprehend. Number one, I have
Before that, may I ask
yes,
you, with
please.
regard to Bangladeshi Ghuspetias, illegal
Yes,
migrants, have
yes.
they all managed to get legal documents? Are they now officially part of West Bengal electoral rolls? Are they now, we can't do anything about them, or is that still an open question? And
Oh,
what's the
many of
size?
them, many of
What's
them,
the
many
size
of
of?
them, many of them. You see, back in 1987 or 88, some central BJP leaders, at that time there was hardly any BJP to speak of in West Bengal. Some central BJP leaders came to see the then Chief Minister Jyoti Basu, and they told Jyoti Basu that the situation that is developing is quite alarming, so you must do something about to stop the flow of these infiltrators. Jyoti Basu did a lot of theatrics, you know. He looked below his table, then he looked behind himself, and they said, I can't see any infiltrators. Where are these infiltrators? Then these people said, we have not come here to joke with you. So this interview is in an end. Bye bye. And then they left. Then the governor at that time, or immediately after that, was a gentleman called T.V. Rajeshwar, who was an IB person. Before that, he was the Director General of the IB, Intelligence Bureau. And he had pointed out that this thing was going to become a very serious issue. He did not point it out, of course, while he was being a governor, but immediately after being relieved of the duties of governor, he started pointing this out. Immediately, the CPM was up in arms, and they said that this simply can't be countenanced. This is all communal. This is horrible. This is against the secular ethos of the country. Blah blah blah. And at that time, you know, the entire central government was in a very unstable state, so nobody took up the issue and it died. And infiltration went on merrily. It was only after 1999 that Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government came to power that this taken issue was really taken in hand, and barbed wire fencing started being erected all over the West Bengal Bangladesh border. But even so, a lot of West Bengal Bangladesh border is riverine and it cannot be fenced. And quite a lot of infiltration takes place through these riverine borders. Lately, one reason why the infiltration they say has reduced is that the economic condition of Bangladesh has lessened, is better. So that is why perhaps there might be some lessening. But I'll just give you one example of why some population figure to illustrate why this infiltration took place. You know, the population density, if you take the whole of India, the population density is of the order of 380 per square kilometer, which is high but not all that high. Some countries in Europe, like the low countries, Belgium, Netherlands, they have this kind of population density. The population density of West Bengal is quite high compared to this average, all India average. It is about 700, 800 per square kilometer. The population density of Bangladesh is of the order of 1100 per square kilometer, and it is uniform. Bangladesh is a very uniform country. The whole country, the language is Bengali, the religion is Islam, and right through. There are no mountains, there are only water courses, so people move freely from one part to another. And in Bangladesh, the average population density is 1100, of the order of 1100 per square kilometer. So you can
Mhm.
imagine why and how people have infiltrated. And these infiltrators have been treated as a vote bank by the so-called secular parties, and that is one of the reasons for this population imbalance, this demographic imbalance. Now, I was discussing the results of this demographic imbalance. One I have already said, that is difficulties for Hindus to live in, persecution of Hindus in the parts where Muslims are majority. Then there is growth of fundamentalism and militancy. There is a question of refuge for Rohingyas, very undesirable elements. You see, I think in 2015 or 16, there was a huge blast in a town called Bardhaman, which is quite near Kolkata. This blast was caused in a place where they were manufacturing explosives. And the people who were manufacturing explosives, they were all Bangladeshi infiltrators. A lot of them were Bangladeshi infiltrators. In fact, many of them had been driven out of Bangladesh by Hasina's government because they belonged to the fundamentalist Islamist parties. So they found refuge in West Bengal and they came to Bardwan. Bardwan has very dense Muslim pockets, and they found refuge over there and they were doing these misdeeds. After that, a large number of such explosions have taken place. But because the government at that time was this Trinamool Congress who had actively encouraged infiltration, nothing had happened. Then these Rohingyas. Who are the Rohingyas? Rohingyas are the Muslim inhabitants of the country of Myanmar on the just south of the Myanmar Bangladesh border. They are generally considered to be a troublesome lot. There is a very small number of Hindus among the Rohingyas. They are very badly persecuted. But the bulk of Myanmar are Buddhists, and they are militant Buddhists. They don't believe in ahimsa, paramo dhamma, or anything, any such thing. When the Rohingyas started agitating and trying to carve out a new country of the Muslim majority parts of Myanmar, the parts which are adjoining Bangladesh, these people are driven out. They had even formed an army called the Arsa, that something revolutionary Rohingya Association or something, Arsa. So this Burmese government or Myanmarese government immediately were alarmed, were not sleeping like the India government, and they drove these people out. They killed a lot of them and they drove the rest out. So these people, these Rohingyas, who were totally undesirable lot, they entered Bangladesh. And Bangladeshi government was alarmed too, because these were mostly fundamentalist Islamists. They did not want the Rohingyas to be there. But the Rohingyas came there, and Rohingyas are great multipliers. In terms of procreation, there are very few people in the world who could beat them. These Rohingyas had been given some kind of camp accommodation in the southernmost tip of the Bangladesh, Chittagong, and there they went on multiplying, and then Bangladesh could not hold them together, hold them in the camp, so they started moving out and, of course, infiltrating into India. Some of them tried to infiltrate into Mizoram, which was the nearest Indian state. But because the Mizos are ethnically different and they don't speak Bengali, these people were driven out. So eventually they came to Tripura, which is Bengali speaking. And there, the lot of them had infiltrated. Some of them infiltrated into Assam also, some Muslim majority districts. And these infiltrators had been turned into a vote bank by the Trinamool, by the Congress, by the CPIM. This has been, and I am sorry to say that the BJP has not done enough to scotch this flow. Further, what is the reason why this we are afraid of this infiltration and change of this change of demographic balance? There is fear of demand for an Islamic state. There is a thing called Anschluss. Anschluss is a German word. Anschluss means movement that was there in in the pre-Second World War in Central Europe, where all the German-speaking parts of countries like Austria, Czechoslovakia, they wanted to join Germany. And then that was one of the things that led to the Second World War. That is a different chapter. But the Bangladesh Rim countries, Bangladesh Rim the states, principally West Bengal and Assam, and a little bit of Bihar also, if they form huge Muslim minorities, then there is always a chance of these Muslim minorities demanding some kind of Anschluss or union with Bangladesh. Then we'll have to deploy the army, and a most undesirable situation will develop. But even though we know all of it, it is not as if only Tathagata knows and nobody else knows. Nobody, others don't know. Everybody knows. But even so, nobody is taking notice and nobody is taking adequate measures because of the usual secular baloney that, oh, these are human beings, how can we stop them, they have human rights, and then how dare you say that they are Muslims, so therefore they are not welcome, this kind of thing. So what do we do about it? We have to think of the remedy. The remedy is already in the government's hand in the form of the NRC and CAA. If NRC and CAA are properly implemented, then that would be the first step. It would not be the last step, but it would be the first step in tackling this problem. Unfortunately, that is not getting done.
No,
The
may I interrupt you at this point,
Yes,
sir?
please.
See, NRC, they haven't even started the ABC of figuring out how to go about it. And with a very corrupt bureaucracy and police, you can buy your way into the roles, into the NRC roles. But more importantly, people keep talking about CAA, but you know it better than me, Tathagaji, that CAA allows citizenship only to 35,000 persecuted Hindus from Bangladesh or Pakistan who are already in India, not new entrants. If CAA had kept doors open of India, as Israel does for Jews, and said wherever there are persecuted Hindus, they can come to their homeland, it would mean something valuable. But CA is actually a dud law. I mean, what good is it when you're not allowing any more than who are already a few thousand who are already there? What good is it?
देखिए ऐसा नहीं है. CAA, as far as I have understood, has has laid down that all the Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, Parsis, etc., who have entered India from Bangladesh or Pakistan or Afghanistan or any of these countries before 2014. Now, before 2014 is a pretty good prescription. Of course, some people have come in even after 2014, but after 2014, there has not been a very major pogrom in Bangladesh. There have been isolated pogroms here and there, just as there was during the Durga Pujas in a town called Komilla in Bangladesh. But there hasn't been any countrywide pogrom which would drive out the Hindus en masse. So
But they
even
are living under threats of forcible conversion. Their daughters are taken away. In Pakistan, for example, there's daily persecution, and the pressures to convert are very severe. And your daughters are not safe, your wives are not safe. So, in that sense, they don't have much future there.
you see, it is not exactly the same in Pakistan and Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, the Hindus are still a substantial group. Secondly, uh, so long as Sheikh Hasina is the prime minister of the country, on the whole, I would say that the Hindus had security. What they don't have is a sense of security, which is quite different from physical security. Physical security means I can live in this country for for the last 10 years, 20 years, and have never suffered anything. But I am always apprehensive that anything can happen at any time. This snatching away of women and pressure for conversion is there in Bangladesh. It is not as if it is not there, but it is much more subdued than what I understand it is there in Pakistan. So Bangladeshi Hindus, they don't like to live in Bangladesh, but they don't consider it. I have spoken to a large number of them. I have gone to Bangladesh at least 5 times. In fact, my ancestors were from Bangladesh. My parents were born. Both my parents were born in a place which is now part of Bangladesh. Now, I have spoken to them. I can speak their dialect, and what I have understood is that they are more or less safe. चलता है, किसी हालत से चला लेंगे, जब तक ना वो कुछ आकर के somebody jumps on them.
No,
And
but Sheikh Hasina is not going to be there forever, number one. She herself is in a precarious condition. She is much better than anybody else we could think of, no doubt. But as you well know, that she's under siege all the time. And therefore her hands get tied. And she's not going to be there forever. Now, if the regime changes, even under Sheikh Hasina, as you well know, during these Navratras, Durga Puja
Durga
days,
Puja.
there were widespread riots. Many homes got burned, people were killed, temples were destroyed,
Yes,
properties
yes,
were
yes,
destroyed.
yes, yes,
No,
yes.
that's a sword hanging over your head every day.
That is why I said that there is security. There is no sense of security.
No, but
You
there's
are
actual
always
threats, physical violence.
physical violence is there, but
Because
not to the
society is hostile. See, apart from the government, sections of the government, namely Hasina and maybe a few, overall, the Islamists in Bangladesh, they do have social clout and they have the power to make your life hell,
no, they
irrespective
are.
of,
That
and the
is true.
police,
That
of
is
course.
true. That is true. But you have uh, here. I'm speaking from some in-depth knowledge. There are
Yeah.
three kinds of Bangladeshi Muslims. The first kind are those in whom the Bengali identity is predominant. And those people will try their best to make the Hindus comfortable. They have nothing against the Hindus. In fact, they want their Hindus to stay. And there are very prominent people among them. Say, for instance, Taslima Nasrin, of course, has been driven out of the country, but there are people like Shahriar Kabir. Shahriar Kabir is a very famous journalist. Then there is another journalist and historian by the name of Muntasir Mamun. There is another professor of history and a researcher called Abul Barkat. Then there are several others who think that Hindus have got a right to live in this country, and they are a substantial number. It is not as if they are a small number. On the other end of the spectrum, you have these Islamists who think that the Hindus must be either driven out or converted. There is no middle ground. Now, in between, there are a large number of Bengali Muslims who would not normally bother about Hindus in their day to day life. But if a pogrom starts, then they would take advantage of the pogrom, they would loot the Hindu houses, they would snatch away their daughters, and all these things. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't exert any pressure on any Hindu. There is some pressure, of course. Say, for instance, I have heard from my own friends who had lived in Bangladesh until they were driven out. They had said that in examinations in schools, if the teacher senses that this is from a Hindu student, they will cut out reduce the marks. This kind of thing is there. But uh, this is what I'm trying to say is that this is not so bad as Pakistan. It is not so bad that the people would be driven to the extent of leaving their home and hearth and come to India with nothing in their hands. It is there is this thing. There are three kinds of people, as I explained, and all this is a little complicated. You have got to look at it in a very nuanced way. So, Hasina, apart from Hasina, there are liberal people in Bangladesh also. There are people, say, I mentioned Shahriar Kabir and Muntasir Mamun, who don't want the Hindus to leave. Pakistan also, there are people like Shari Rahman or there are other people, I forget the name of, there is a journalist, um,
No,
lady journalist.
Pakistan has also a good number of people who are dissenters, but the point is those who can wield violence, those who can threaten to kill you, and they know that the police will protect them. Mainly, the police and the state agencies are complicit in violence against Hindus. That you well know. Now, the point is, you only need about 10-20% such determined jihadis in order for making lives of others a living hell and forcing them to quit. Because let's face it, they may not be coming to India, but I'm told that every day at least 600 Bangladeshi Hindus are moving out to other countries wherever they can find refuge. They don't find themselves safe. They're afraid to speak. They're afraid to even document their own predicament. They're afraid to come on TV and speak about it, except very few. And life is simply not safe. I know I've had to give shelter to at least two young students who were attacked because they were active on social media and talking about, like youngsters do, women's rights, etc. And they had to flee. Their families sent them to India. And one of them took shelter with me for a while. Another one took shelter with Taslima for a while. Then she's moved away. So it's if on Facebook you cannot even talk about women's rights, for example, which is teenage stuff. Even teenage stuff is not allowed. It was not as if they were making insulting comments about Islam or any of that. They were simply talking about women's rights, as in the women. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is this: I don't want that people should have to leave. I would rather they stay there. But the CAA needs to make provision for those who are persecuted and have to flee. That's the point, which it does not do. That's the point. And secondly, what would you say to the proposal? Just as in 1947, a lot of people, including Baba Sahib Ambedkar, had proposed that there be peaceful transfer of population, um, which was not done with disastrous results. Now, can't we propose something like that to Bangladesh, peaceful transfer? So you take your illegal Bangladeshis, and we take the Hindus who are endangered, if not vanishing, but they're shrinking. Definitely. I mean, from 29% to 8% could be less today. Is a is a humongous decline. It's ethnic cleansing, systematic ethnic cleansing going on. So I don't know why India is so stingy about allowing those who are persecuted and could be facing either death or forced conversion.
Ma'am, I've got an answer to that. India
Ji.
is stingy about it because the first cousins of the persecuted Bangladeshi Hindus, who are the first cousins of the persecuted Bangladeshi Hindus, they are the Hindus of West Bengal. Until the Hindus of West Bengal wake up to this danger and wake up to the problem of their first cousins in Bangladesh, why should the rest of India bother? The rest of India consisting of Punjabis, Rajasthanis, Maharashtrians, Gujaratis, Tamils, why should they bother when they find that the very first cousins, they are not bothered? This is a very strange thing that I have not been able to make peace with ever since I came of age. And that is one of the things that drove me into politics. You know, I'm basically a civil engineer, as you yourself said, and then I need not have come into politics. I was very comfortable in the job that I was in the railways. But these things, this inaction of the Hindu majority in West Bengal, their total indifference to the state of the Bangladeshi Hindus, is one of the things that I intended to write. And that is one of the things that drove me to the RSS and the BJP. Now, I have not lost my confidence in any of these institutions, but I still think not enough is being done. And the principal reason for that is that West Bengal Hindus, the majority West Bengal Hindus, the very first cousins, sometimes the siblings of the Bangladeshi Hindus, they are not bothered. So if they are not bothered, why should the rest of India be bothered? This is
No,
a
but rest of
great.
India is beginning to be bothered as we are getting to know. For see, till the age of social media and internet, mostly we didn't even know what was happening. For example, hardly anyone in India knew that in 1971, of the 3 million slaughtered by the Pakistani army, more than 90%, I'm told, were Hindu Bangladeshis.
Absolutely right.
This was
Absolutely right.
never told to us. This was never told to us. This was never admitted by the government. Had that been told loud and clear, then the response would have been very different. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is this. Um, Bengal was the cradle of revolutionary nationalism, as you well know. And most of your leaders, Bengali leaders, were deeply rooted in the Hindu ethos. You know, even Vande Mataram comes from Bengal. The national anthem comes from Bengal. And some of the foremost revolutionary leaders but today Bengali Hindus have turned so timid and indifferent, um, and literally accepting the Islamization of their state without wanting to blink an eyelid. How did it happen? I mean, this is hard to understand. Why the internal resistance to destruction of their culture? is something they've become so indifferent to.
You have hit the nail on the head, ma'am. It is a question that has troubled me all these years, I told you, and which is why I think I have found an answer to it. The answer is that the revolutionary zeal that you had seen in Bengal had ebbed out in the 1930s. You see, in the 19th, the what had happened in the 1930s is that the cultural and literary scene in Bengal gradually began to be totally eclipsed by the leftists and Marxists. Before that, it was completely taken. It was in the hands of nationalists. It was earlier on. It was even more so where people like Bankim Chandra had written the Bande Mataram, and
Yeah,
thereafter in the 20s and in the early 30s, a lot of these uh, a lot of these revolutionaries had participated in bloody struggles. If you go to the cellular jail in Andamans, you will
yeah,
find that the tablets which contain the names of the revolutionaries and the people who were jailed there for patriotic reason, the largest number were from Bengal. And they were all
hmm,
Hindus. To a man, they were all Hindus. The second
yeah,
largest number is from Punjab.
yeah.
But this thing, this space, this literary space, this cultural space was completely usurped by the leftists who taught the Bengali Hindus a completely warped value system. And they worked on the minds of these people while the Congress completely laid off. The Congress did not bother about the uh, Congress did not bother about the literary and cultural space. They only bothered about politics. With the result that the mindset was changed, the value system was changed. As I was saying a little while back, the values, according to the leftist value system, it became sinful to talk ill of a Muslim, even if he had snatched away your sister and cut the throat of your parents. I have seen it myself. I've seen it in my own family. My father was a sort of a mild leftist, and he was also a person who had been driven out of West Bengal, but out of East Bengal. But whenever I talked ill of Muslims, he used to say, "No, no, this is not correct. This is an improper attitude. They are just as much as human beings, as much human beings as possible." I don't mind their religion, I don't mind their being human beings, but why should they drive me out? And why should I not be able to speak about them? Ma'am, you are digging up very, very old sores in me, and I must express my gratefulness to you about it. So these are the reasons. In fact, the last book that I had written, it is in Bengali, so you won't be able to read it. But last book that I had written principally about this stranglehold of leftist thinking on the Bengali Hindu psyche and what damage it has done. This exodus of industries from West Bengal, we're into a completely different chapter. It is entirely a result of leftist domination of the Bengali Hindu mind. In fact,
Is
Mamata
it also?
Banerjee,
Yeah, sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
in fact, Mamata Banerjee is just copying the leftists. What the leftists did during the 34 years of their rule, Mamata Banerjee has been doing the same thing during the last 11 years of her rule. Everything, every little thing, to every line, she is copying from the leftists
No,
until we get out
she's
of the
actually
point.
worse because I
Yes.
remember that
Mm,
during CPM rule, for
mm,
example, the
mm,
state government would shut down during Durga Puja. All the
mm,
CPM leaders, CPI leaders, Maoists, all
mm,
would be
mm,
in the Durga Puja pandals.
mm, mm,
And that was something they never gave up. That's one.
mm, mm.
Mamata Banerjee seems embarrassed about being a Hindu. You see her doing namaz and doing all those shenanigans. I mean, she's
Yes.
far more Hindu hating than even rabid Marxists were. That to me is inexplicable. How a woman can turn out to be So self-hating or hating of her own heritage, her own family, what's the issue? Secondly, see, everywhere else there has been a good amount of resistance to left ideology. It's not as if other states the communists didn't try, but they faced they may have dominated academic institutions, curriculum, school education, college education, but on the ground, they did face challenges and they didn't become as dominant as in Bengal. What is it that made Bengal so effete before this noxious ideology?
Basically, it is the fact that no other, I mean, what had happened in the other states did not happen over here. The anti-left, the Hindu-minded people did not raise their voice in other states, in Bengal as much as they did in other states. You would be surprised, ma'am, to know that when I first joined the BJP, people kept used to say, first thing they used to say that why BJP, why BJP will never come to power in Bengal, this is the leftist state, there is no chance of BJP, are you mad, are you wasting your time and energy, etc. That is understandable. But they were saying, this is a communal party, why have you joined this thing? Their philosophy is pernicious, it is awful, it is obnoxious. This
And they
is the
don't read
kind of thing that
Islam.
used to
They
say.
don't know what
And
is
also,
Islam about.
just one second, and the people who are saying it, a very large number of people, large number of such, among such people, or their parents had been driven out of East Bengal because of their Hindu religion. Even so, they were saying it. This is the extent to which the Hindu mind had been corrupted by leftist propaganda.
Is it also that there has been, after the left took charge and drove out industries and drove out, there was economic collapse virtually, that
Mhm.
there's been a large scale exodus of intellectuals from Bengal? There was a time Bengal produced the best musicians, the best writers, the best intellectuals, the best academics, the best lawyers, the best so many things. No more. You don't hear about Bengal now producing that kind of. So, is the intellectual life also so diminished?
Ma'am, we are now getting into various side issues, but I'll answer your question. See, you are right that this has happened. There has been an exodus of Bengali talent. And the reason for that exodus is that the communists very pointedly, very as a matter of their scheme of uh, perpetuating their intellectual hold on the masses. They had cultivated mediocrity. They had cultivated mediocrity. They had hated excellence. Now, if you create a situation where excellence is hated and mediocrity is cultivated, then what do you expect? Everything was made political. Say, for instance, once upon a time, Presidency College in Kolkata was considered to be one of the very best colleges in the whole of India.
Hmm.
Now, and only the very best, the most meritorious professors used to be posted in Presidency College. Now, the communist government, they made the posts transferable between Presidency College and other government colleges. So that was immediately one thing which drove away a lot of people who were teaching in Presidency College. This is only one example, but there were many such examples, and every recruitment, every little post. There was a secretary of the CPIM in West Bengal called Anil Biswas, who was a super schemer. And this Anil Biswas had said that there is nothing outside politics. In Bengali, he said, Rajnitir baire kichu hoy na, Rajniti ke bahar kuch nahi hota hai. Everything is political. Even poultry farming, whether a person will get admitted into a hospital or not, everything is a political decision. This is one of the things that has ruined the state and caused the exodus of intellectuals. Madhuji, I think we'll have to conclude now. We have spoken.
Okay, we will
I'm really
conclude,
getting
but
tired.
give me last bit.
Uh,
Now,
uh,
just 5 minutes. This
yes, yes.
election saw a real Hindu upsurge, and from
Hmm.
3 to 73, BJP won a number of seats. Do you think no, there
No, no,
wasn't?
no, 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 no. You see, before this, in the Lok Sabha elections, BJP had won 18 seats. 18 seats in a Lok Sabha election translate themselves to 126 seats. So we
Hmm.
did not go up from 3 to 77. We went down from 126 to 77. Not only that, this time the anger of the people against Mamata's misrule was so much. I had done a little bit of electioneering, not much. The anger of the people against Mamata's misrule was so much that
Hmm.
BJP was rightfully expecting to get more than 200 seats and definitely get a very comfortable, if not majority, at least a comfortable minority. What had happened is that horrible mismanagement, horrible mismanagement of the elections. The
By the
team that
BJP.
was entrusted, the team that was entrusted with the running of the elections in West Bengal was led by a inveterate womanizer, and that debauch, he had completely ruined the rest of the people are just as rotten. There was a four-member team about whom I have already spoken. I have reported this to the BJP central leadership also. I don't want to go into this subject right now, but this is the reason why we did so badly. BJP did so badly in West Bengal this time. They did badly. They did not do well.
But, yes, but what I meant is there was a Hindu resurgence. BJP messed it up. Am I right?
Yes, yes,
They
yes,
could
yes.
easily have won. Now,
Definitely.
but why did central leadership go so horribly wrong?
You are in Delhi, you ask the central leadership, I don't know.
No, but they say the same.
I know the people who were managing the election in West Bengal, and they were rotten people.
Yeah, everybody knew because their own track record is zilch. I mean, it's not as if they have a glorious track record. And if they,
Right.
so, but surely voices of people like yours must have reached the high command,
Didn't.
didn't?
Apparently didn't.
Are they regretful now? Are they doing soul searching? Because they're not helping people. There's been total callousness in dealing with the victims of Bengal violence. Their own party cadre have been left at the mercy of wolves. How come? How can BJP be so callous?
See, the position right now is that I have been reduced to the status of an ordinary member of BJP, not even an active member. But it so happens that a lot of people support me, and there is social media which nobody can throttle very easily. So with these things, I get a lot of voices of support from the lower echelons. But the people who are in power in the party right now some of them are the people who had been responsible for the debacle of the party in the state. So you can imagine what the result is likely to be.
No, that was evident that there was gross mismanagement. Now, are you saying that the upsurge that took place and the retaliation, the kind of brutal retaliation that Hindus have faced following their open support for BJP, are they likely to ever rise again, trust BJP again, or we'll have to look for another party?
I would like to hope that BJP will rise again, like that legendary bird phoenix. All it needs is good leadership in the state. All it needs is a good leadership in the state.
But
Unfortunately, Mm, I
This,
don't
the
know.
high command doesn't seem to be picking the right people everywhere. And you've seen what they've done with the farm laws. That surrender is going to cost them heavy. They're doing same in Kashmir. So BJP's image of being Rashtravadi is getting seriously eroded. And today, the very reason why people gravitated towards BJP, that this party would safeguard national interests, is what appears to be being betrayed on a large scale everywhere.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
So, is the party now in the BJP cadre completely demoralized and they're just sitting at home, or have they gone back to TMC? What's happening to them? How
No,
are they
no,
coping?
the cadre have not gone to TMC. It is only some leaders who had been
Okay.
imported from TMC. You know, there was a Yogdan Mela. There was a Yogdan Mela. Can you imagine that? That
Hmm.
in a party which is supposed to be regimented, which is supposed to be ideology driven, there is a Yogdan Mela in which people from a different party would come and join for only for pelf and power, nothing else. But
Hmm.
this is what had happened.
Yeah.
The old guard of the BJP had been completely sidelined,
Sideline.
including me,
Yeah.
completely sidelined. There was with no importance, and the this the ruling dispensation in the state BJP, they all danced around the these great newcomers, and among the newcomers, there were some extremely undesirable characters. They were B grade TV actresses who, after getting a ticket and a lot of money for that ticket, they went to a steamer party with a rival leader of Trinamool Congress. Not only that, they were so politically stupid that they got themselves photographed with that leader and uploaded that photograph. Can you beat it? That is the sort of people with whom we ran the election. What do you expect the result to be? This is what had happened.
Well, the situation seems very grim in that sense. Now,
Very grim.
is the Hindu of Bengal capable of giving a fight if a new leadership emerges?
Yes. Answer is yes. But that is a very big if. If a new leadership emerges, there is new leadership. The leadership has got to be put in the proper place.
You mean
There is
already
leader material.
leaders exist? It's just that they've been sidelined. That's what you're
Yes,
saying.
yes, yes, yes. Followers also exist. Leaders exist. Followers also exist. It's just they have been sidelined.
And there's no sense of regret, no brainstorming over it. Have you been called for giving a feedback on the elections?
No,
No?
ma'am. No, ma'am.
So that means there, apart from idiocy, there's also arrogance.
There is.
Well, that's a very grim picture. Now, let's just see what comments there are. Couple of questions, if they may be, and otherwise, then we wind up. Admin Ji, please
Right,
post some comments and questions if there are any. I
right,
do hope. Uh,
right. But don't take it too long, ma'am. I mean,
no, no,
15
no,
minutes
another
is
five
about the
minutes,
limit.
just 5 minutes.
Okay, okay,
Let's
okay.
see.
একটু বলবেন?
Um, okay, Kumar. Those who felt betrayed by BJP will not trust BJP again. They would switch to other safety mechanisms and denounce politics per se as a means to safeguard their interests. What do you say to this?
See, you cannot denounce politics per se. Without politics, what will you have? How will you choose your government? You can't do without a government. You will get what is called in Hindi as arajakta. So, with arajakta is a horrible state. In
We have
fact,
a Arajakta. If you
we
think
have a
TMC is
Rajata,
not
but we at
Arajakta,
least
TMC
nominally right
is
now.
institutionalized Arajakta, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But still, there is the judiciary to whom we can go and try to seek some redress. But if there is no political leadership and if there is everything is gone, then there is no judiciary also. So we are in a horrible state. There is no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean that politics itself has to be denounced. Politics has to be there. You know, the our very friendly neighbor on the west, that is Pakistan. Their people agitate for political rule and freedom from army rule. So we must also have politics, but politics must be properly played. Politics where the leadership must be proper. It isn't now. So it
This is
isn't so.
mafia Raj, sir. This is not politics.
Yes, yes, it
Rajniti
is.
nahi hai, mafia Raj
Hmm.
hai.
It
The
is so. It is
silent
so.
bong. The
It is so.
silent bong says BJP is gone
Absolutely.
in Bengal. Pura
Hmm.
titar pitar ho gaye hain.
Hmm.
And it says that now he was saying municipal elections are about to come and
Yes.
BJP is nowhere on the scene. That's what Silent Bong wrote for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
That BJP is nowhere on the scene in the municipal elections?
More or less, there is a lot of truth in it.
Okay. Crypto Gyan. BJP has been in power in states for decades. Why doesn't Yogi or at least Hemanta change syllabus in their states at least? It'll accelerate mindset change. This is not something that you can answer, or can you? Would you like to answer this?
No, I cannot really answer, but I have an observation in regard to this. That BJP right now, it is my impression that BJP is short of thought leaders. We have a lot of, this active politicians, but we have lost all the thought leaders. We used to have great thought leaders in the BJP and the RSS. Say, for instance, people like only today I was thinking about him, Moropant Pingle is one person. Very few people have heard of him. But moreover, I had the good fortune to meet him once when I went to RSS Shiksha Varg. And there I heard the Moropant Pingle speak. And then I tried to go and get some half an hour's time privately with him. And later on, I came to know that this is the person who had thought up the Ram Mandir movement. I mean, at least he played a very big part of it. The Ram Mandir movement, I need hardly tell you, was a epoch-making thing. He thought it up. We need such people. We need people to think things up. There is
Hmm.
this shortage. Unless this is done, we need political philosophers. Unless there are people like that, we'll get into trouble.
But would you not agree that during the days of Vajpayee and Advani, state leaders had greater say? The decision making was not so heavily concentrated, for example, in the PMO or in the central office in Delhi. Now, the high command controls everything, and they choose the most bizarre people to lead not only elections but also as chief ministers and put them in key positions. So, talent aversion seems to have taken over BJP in a very big way. They also become the high command at least. I don't know about uh, levels, but the high command seems very talent averse, and which is why somebody like you is marginalized. I mean, it makes no sense at all. You gave your best years to BJP and RSS, and today, when they need you most, they won't even talk to you.
See, I can't speak about the other states. But in my state, the most bizarre people were indeed chosen. And the result is for all of us to see.
Okay. Is there any chance of reviving Hindutva in TMC? Can BJP members who join TMC take the That's impossible. It's really Islamic
See, no
domination.
old BJP, no person who were in the BJP for ideological reasons has left and gone and joined the TMC. People who have joined the TMC were originally in TMC. They came here for power and pelf. They didn't get it, or they got part of it. They didn't get any more. So they figured that we've got what we needed. Now let's get back where the power and pelf is. And when they've gone back. But people who had been struggling for the party since the 1980s, people who had been told that you people are mad, you are trying to do BJP in this leftist state, you are stark mad. I was told these things. None of them have left and gone to the TMC.
My last question.
Yes.
See, in many places, this kind of frustration with BJP, like for example in Jammu, after the euphoria over the scrapping of Articles 370 and 35A, the many U turns that BJP High Command is taking, it's back to square one. They've even announced that they may, for example, unify the state and restore status quo prior to the. I mean, there've been all kinds of compromises being made and U-turns being taken, and therefore, in that state, in Jammu, a regional outfit has arisen. Young people, Ikjut Jammu. Why would you not consider something like that? At least consolidate those who came to. Why don't you start a new regional party? If there is such an upsurge and there is.
None, that is easy. No, that is first thing easier said than done. Secondly, I am completed 76 years. I am going on 77. It is not for me to think of such things. I
But
don't
there'll
have
be
that
others,
many
I'm
years
sure.
left on this earth.
But surely there must be others. I mean, today
There
BJP
are
leaders are
others,
so
yes. There are others.
they're
There are
afraid to
others.
even talk.
If they take, yes, if they take, but they have to be, they are driven up to a point when they start thinking of such things. I wouldn't like to think of such extreme steps right now. I am still hopeful that BJP will see its mistakes and it will correct itself. That is a much easier thing than to try to form a regional party. It is, I'm
No, but
generally,
that
I'm
would be like
a
a pressure group. At least your cadres have a platform. You don't have to fight elections, but they should have a platform. They should know that there is some organizational support behind them. Otherwise, you get scattered and isolated.
quite true. I don't know. I've never
Okay.
given it a thought. As I said, I'm 77. I'm going on 77. I don't have that many years left on this earth.
Well, we would like to see you live long, Tathagati, and I
Thank you.
hope some other youngsters take the initiative. At least keep the people together, create a platform which may or may not fight elections, but at least provides a certain amount of security, sense of solidarity to Hindus who rose in revolt against the tyranny of TMC and communists. I hope it happens sooner than later.
What I'll try to do is to write. What I'll try to do is to write and try to create people's consciousness by writing. That is what I can do, and I plan to do that.
Okay, here's Silent Bog saying Tathagat Roy is a living legend of Bengal. He's the best Bengali nationalist of modern era. With these on this positive note, we'd like to end this session. Thank you for your time
Thank
and
you.
all the best in your struggle for survival and reawakening of the Hindu uh, population in Bengal, the Hindu voter, the Hindu citizen, and the civilizational resurgence that's needed in Bengal. I hope it draws strength from its past glory and something new emerges because right now the situation in Bengal is demoralizing all those of us who are witnessing it from afar. It's been a major, watershed moment, I would say. Nobody expected BJP High Command to abandon its own cadres in this manner. I do hope they wake up. Otherwise, things aren't going to be easy for them in 2024. With these words, thank you again.
Thank you,
Namaskar
ma'am.
and Jai Hind. Viewers,
Send me the
please.
link. Bap re bap.